Okay, welcome. My name is Bill Rice. I am the founder and CEO of Kaleido Digital Marketing, and today we're going to talk about how to design a website that generates leads. So we're going to go into a lot of detail about the mechanisms and how lead generation works on the web, and then we're going to get right down to the very specifics of how to accomplish that and the sort of the elements that go into preparing that to actually happen and then to be successful with those outcomes. So a couple of administrative things right off the bat. I think we've had a good sound check and video check, but again, we're going to be using the question box throughout this webinar. So I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and open up that question box and tell me that you can see and hear me. And then also throughout this webinar, I don't want you to hold your questions to the end. Anytime as we're going through the presentation, a question pops to mind, or if you came to this webinar with questions that you wanted to answer, don't wait to the end. Put those in the question box, and I'm going to try to, hey, how are you doing, Stephen? I'm going to try to answer those as we go along and mix it into the presentation. Again, trying to get all those questions answered throughout the webinar. And then at the end, we're going to kind of do a cool thing. This is always fun. If you have a website that you want us to review live to talk about some potential strategies for traffic and how to make those pages and websites convert better, please put that URL in the question box. And Dave, who's on here helping me out, will help to queue those up so that Mike Carroll, who's on with me as well on this, our creative director, and I will go through some live reviews of those websites and try to give you some direct and specific tips. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So here's the agenda. So first of all, I'm going to confess to you that I screwed up. When I originally set this up, I thought that the content would be able to be covered in an hour. And really, we do this every day, and so we're really familiar with lead generation and designing websites that actually do that and how to connect all the pieces. And as I started to kind of put the presentation together, I realized that we're really not going to get to everything you probably need to know. And depending on where you are with your own knowledge, we're probably going to leave some gaps during this webinar. So here's my one-time offer. This is a Calendly link that you see here at the top, calendly.com/Bill-Rice, yada, yada. As I'm going through this, if you want to take that down, you can actually go to that link. It will give you live access to my calendar, and you're welcome to set up any 30-minute block that's convenient for you. And if you get on my calendar, we will put together a go-to-meeting, just you and I, and we'll actually do a free website review. So if I don't get to you today, or for whatever reason you feel like I've left gaps, I'm going to give you that one-time opportunity. And then just to let you know going forward what a great opportunity this is, we're probably, because it's so large, we're probably actually going to turn this into a course that we'll ultimately be selling. So this is kind of that one-time good deal if you want to set up that 30-minute run through. And again, we'll get in there specifically, and I'll give you, and you're going to get a sample of that as we go through this the webinar. You get a feel of what a session like that would look like. So anyway, that's the offer right off the top. You don't have to wait around for that. Again, should be a great opportunity. There's always fun to do. All right, so this is what we're going to cover. First and foremost, we want to know what a lead is and how it happens. I think there's a lot of misconceptions and myths around how leads happen on the web. So I'm going to try to pull back the curtain on that a little bit and unpack, how a lead really happens and get some reality injected into that. We're going to talk about leveraging the two main entities that make up a successful lead or a sales lead outcome. We're going to be talking about traffic, and we're going to talk about conversion and how to create sustainable systems to do both of those in a consistent way. That's usually what fails in most of these web design sort of setups, is we may get something right, but we don't actually create a system or a process by which we're constantly trying to optimize those two elements, traffic and conversion. And then we're going to talk about actually designing to attract more traffic. So I'm going to talk about the elements in your websites that are important to make them attractive to web traffic, to people. And then we're also going to talk about how to design in order to create the right behaviors and to create that conversion activity that we want. And then last but not least, and probably the most valuable part of this whole session, so I'm going to actually speed through the presentation really quickly so we can get to those live website reviews. Like I said, questions. Absolutely do not wait till the end. A lot of webinars do that. I don't like to do that. I love to have your questions along the way, and we'll answer those right in with the presentation. So if there's anything that you came to the webinar with as a question and that you hope to get answered, go ahead and give those to me early, and I'll make sure all of those questions get answered. If for whatever reason you're watching this on the recording later, or you're just shy, then here's all my contact information. You're welcome to reach out to me and ask me those questions specifically, and I will answer all of them. That's really important to me. And then ultimately, if you're not signed up for our newsletter, that's a great way to get all of our kind of best information through that newsletter. It's once a week, and again, we really pour out to you guys a lot of good information and knowledge. So here's first and foremost the biggest myth that we have to overcome when we're talking about lead generation. Everybody thinks it's a bullet train. Somebody comes into your website and immediately loves what you got and is ready to buy. And even if they fill out a lead form, there's also the further misconception that that lead, when somebody fills it out or somebody gives you an initial phone call, that they're ready to buy and that you should either close it or forget about it. And so that's just definitely not the way it works on the web. The web ultimately is a really messy place, a messy process. We're just hoping to the best of our ability that we're putting them down the right path, even though, again, there's all these distractions every which way. We're trying to just drive them down the right path. This is kind of what it looks like. If you really break everything down and you thought about all of the things that go into potentially making a lead happen, this is what it looks like. So, you know, somewhere out there we're sharing some information, or somebody else shares some information, or we're talking to somebody, or maybe you're running some paid campaigns or whatever. And this is sort of this acquisition cloud out there. And as the web sort of changes more from a search-based web to a streaming-based web, meaning you're picking things up in your Facebook stream or your Twitter stream or your Instagram feed or whatever, and you're just sort of happening things in front of your face, this becomes even messier. So somewhere along the line, they happen to see you, end up on your website. Again, people think they go to the website and immediately convert, and this isn't what happens. Then what happens once they get to the website is they usually bounce around, bounce in and out of your website. We've done a lot of analytics that actually show that a lot of times people will save a page and they'll revisit that page 5, 6, 7 times over multiple days, potentially before converting. We also see behaviors where people will go through several pages on your website. So again, they're bouncing around on the website. A lot of times, depending on whether or not you have mechanisms set up in place in a good way, they'll bounce out to a social channel, or they'll bounce out to your email list or get on your email list. And then they'll start to go in this other loop of referrals and retention, that sort of thing. And once they've had all these multiple interactions with you, usually, is actually when they start to convert. So there's a lot of this activity that you have to have right in order to get the revenue at the bottom. So again, really sort of a confusing and messy place, and we're going to try to give you some hints on how to sort of streamline that a bit. So before I get into the details of traffic and conversion, I do want to take a quick side note on sales. So one of the things we run into a lot with clients is we realize that we help them get the traffic that they need, the conversions that they need, and then we find out the sales process is broken. Well, the sales process is super critical. When I was showing this slide back here, and we're talking about these loops that are happening out here with referrals and retention, sales is a big part of that. If you don't have these leads going into a CRM system or some sort of system where you can keep up with them and follow up over a period of days and weeks, you're probably going to lose a lot of the potential revenue that you've created when you're generating your leads on your website. So if you get everything right and you don't have a sales process, you're still probably going to have quite a bit of difficulty in achieving the ROI you want from all of this. And the reason for that is because kind of this graph, and this is actually a real graph. Everybody sort of assumes that people come into your website, somehow become a lead, whether that's filling out a web form or they call you directly. And sometime, or most of them, will convert in that first month. So this is the assumed graph that we think happens. Again, somebody submits a web lead or becomes a web lead, and then they're either going to convert in the first month or they're not. Or at least most of them are going to convert in the first month or they're not. But this is really what actually the true trajectory of a lead is. So of all those leads that come in on day one, if you were to follow that group, that cohort, as we say, along their path, you would find that there's a pretty even distribution of leads in that day that convert over a matter of weeks, months, potentially even 6 months or longer. So there's a real even distribution. So if you don't have that sales process, again, no matter how many leads you're going to generate, you're probably going to end up losing a lot of that revenue just because you're not following up with them. Even though, because a lot of times people are coming in for research, they just want some information, they'll fill out the form, but really they're not close to the buying decision, depending on whether you're B2C or B2B. We'll talk about that for another couple weeks or even months. So let's get into traffic at this point. So attracting traffic is more than just going out there and sort of pulling people in. There's a lot of components, a lot of elements right on your site that have to be in place in order to make that an attractive place for people to come. And for all those social things to be happening such that we get out into those feeds. So first and foremost, the actual website itself has to look professional. If it looks like your brother's uncle put it together, or it's circa 1990 or something like that, there's going to be less trust and credibility that goes into that visit or that experience. So we want a professional, contemporary web design. Content management system is becoming super critical. Obviously, Google loves content, and so you have to have a platform where it's really easy for you to publish on a regular basis in order for you to get any ranking. If you just do the classic sort of 5 to 10 page website, host it up there, Google will almost completely ignore you because they want good current information. So you're going to need a content management system. Blog is, that's come to mean a lot of different things now. It's really almost going away as a concept because it is just the nature of publication in a content management system. So if you have WordPress or something like that, you want to have consistent content flowing out. And a lot of times that becomes a blog, or that's what you're using is that mechanism of distribution. Consistency and frequency, we're going to talk about this in a second, but that's probably the most important, is to set up for yourself a consistent publication schedule. Make sure that you're actually providing content out to your audience on a regular basis. That's going to be the best way to get out and end up in these streams, is just because you're frequently publishing new, fresh, interesting content. Content distribution works hand in hand with that. You have to actually produce the content in order to distribute it out through all of these channels. And then ultimately, web analytics is going to give you all that background information to figure out what's working and what's not. So you can double down on what's working and you can stop what's not. Like I said, consistency and frequency, the most important. Really the easiest way to do that is simply start an editorial calendar. And this gives you a little bit of an understanding of how ours looks. It's really super simple, but we just make sure that we are publishing on a regular basis and we're syndicating that information out. And if you don't do it, if you just say, hey, I'm going to wake up this morning, I'm going to try to put together some content, you'll never do it. You really have to get on a schedule, and you need to make that time block just as important as anything else that you do in your day. The other thing, and this is where we're going to kind of get into the experience of kind of doing a web review or website review. But this is really important. This is one of the first things that we do whenever we look at a new website and we're trying to get that website to produce leads. We're looking in the market for gaps. So this is kind of how that process looks. And if we do a web review, we'll kind of look a little bit at this. And let's see, take a look at questions here real quick. Thanks, Meg. We're going to try to get to yours. So it's better to drive traffic to a page with a lot of information to build trust with the consumer and let them do their own research before completing a form, or a specific squeeze page designed strictly to capture leads while narrowing. Actually, I'm not going to directly answer this one, Mike, because Michael Carroll is our creative director. He's going to go into that a lot of depth. We've actually learned a lot of new things, and behavior on the web has changed a little bit. So it's a little bit of a balance of both. We're not a big believer in squeeze pages and landing pages. That's kind of the old method, and we're finding, again, depending on what your transaction is, if it's just the least bit of complexity, that feeling of compressing them into an immediate decision, again, unless you're selling pixie sticks or something, if there's any level of complexity that's needed in there, you're probably going to lose them. So we kind of like the deeper look, but we're going to talk specifically to that question and some things that we've done recently to really improve that and have kind of the best of both worlds. So thanks for the question, Mike. So let's take a look for gaps. Okay, so I picked a random personal injury attorney in Arkansas. We do a lot of work with lawyers and personal injury in particular. So this is something we're really familiar how to kind of go into these markets. Obviously, we're a full service agency. We do everybody, but this is a really good example. So So the first thing we do is obviously look at the website, and I'm not going to show you the whole website. We might get into that if we have time. We can show you this website particularly. They do a ton of things right on the conversion side of the house. And I would suggest, even though I don't know these guys personally, that they probably convert really well once traffic gets there. But they do have pretty classic sort of market mistakes happening on the traffic side of the equation. So as we go into our tools and we start to look at the traffic and where these people rank and this sort of thing, one element that we always look at is just the organic or the search engine optimization, sort of the organic rankings. A couple things that stand out right off the bat. So we identify their competitors. This is the one we're looking at. You can see they're kind of number 2. These guys have a few more keywords than they do, but as it goes against all the rest of these competitors, they're definitely at the top. But they're number 2. So then we go over here and we start to look at what do they rank for. So obviously a branded, that's pretty easy. And then a lot of sort of the similar terms, personal injury, Arkansas, bankruptcy, some of the other practice areas and that sort of thing. So kind of what you would expect if you just said, hey, I'm got a personal injury attorney, what should I rank for? This is probably what you would come up with. You're like, oh, I'm in Arkansas, people looking for personal injury attorney, Arkansas personal injury attorney. Well, you'll see right off the bat is they rank really well, but if you look at the volume of traffic, there's hardly any traffic here. And then you go over to the cost per click, it's next to 0, which means no one's really bidding on that traffic. And we're going to talk about that in 2 ways. And then ultimately, here's the problem. Again, if we're not kind of looking at the traffic and the market in this way, this is what ends up happening. We're sitting right on, this is a Venn diagram of where we are competing for keywords. And you can see we're all competing right on top of each other, almost 1 for 1 for the same keywords, and all of them are really bad. So there's nobody here kind of looking for this, and if they are, they're probably other attorneys. So here's a gap shaping up and also a huge opportunity. So when we see a market like this, we love this because there's tons of opportunity to improve this. So here's what we're looking for. We're looking for blind spots in the market. So let's kind of go over here, and I know, again, from experience and working with personal injury, Social Security disability is a big revenue component for these type of law firms. And if I just look here in Arkansas and just do the kind of the simple search, you can see almost 3 times as much traffic, sometimes even more, in these 2 little terms here. There's a whole bunch of alternative terms that I can target on a local basis, again, with tons of volume. There's definitely people paying for it, but they're not paying a lot, so I can definitely get into the market for relatively cheap. And then if I actually go and look at the search itself, there's nobody here. There's only 1 paid ad here. And this particular law firm we're actually familiar with, they don't even practice in Arkansas. So there's a lot of opportunity both here organically as well as on the paid front. So this is when we're looking for new traffic or we're looking to really kind of get our lead generation engine working. Hey, we're converting really well. We need to go after some traffic. So this is the kind of things we look for. Huge gap, huge opportunity. Again, probably somebody we'll reach out to see if we can help somebody in that market of those 5 competitors. So once you've figured out the traffic element, we're trying to figure out how we can also get traffic based on content distribution. So we talked a little bit about developing content and getting it out into the audience. As far as how do I get that out, this is a list of the ways that you can generate consistent traffic. So there's really 2 ways to look at it from the big picture. You can either build audiences, which you should, and you can also leverage other people's audiences. So those are the kind of the 2 different ways that you can get out there and get traffic, distributing your content. And I've kind of circled my preferences of the ones that, again, are the most consistent and the easiest to achieve quickly. So building an email list, again, all of these could be their own topic, and we probably will cover them in other webinars. We won't be able to get into it too deeply here, but developing your own email list so that you can consistently and frequently distribute content to those people that are on your list. Facebook audiences, Facebook pages in particular. So these are 2 just guaranteed money makers if you can build these audiences. And again, in future webinars, we can kind of talk about how to do that. Here's some other places where you can build your own audience, which is always the best way to have that seed core element of audiences that you can serve. And then when they're ready to convert, they'll become leads. So that's the building the audiences, leveraging other people's audiences. So this is places and platforms where people already exist and go, and you can potentially tap into that in some way. A lot of these opportunities require you to pay for them, which is okay because again, paid media is usually not as expensive as you think, and you're probably spending marketing dollars on something. So it's just a decision on whether or not these marketing dollars are more valuable and more lead producing than probably where you're spending it today. So any kind of paid media is always a favorite of mine. This could mean AdWords, this could mean Facebook ads. Again, you're tapping into a platform where people are already there, and you're forcing, by being able to pay for it, you're forcing your content into their stream and into their field of vision. And the nice thing about paid versus organic, one, you can control it. Number two, you can get super, super targeted. Had a ton of success with Facebook because the type of very granular targeting that you can do both on a B2B and a B2C basis is really specific. The other thing is I kind of dotted lined Reddit down here because this has been sort of a little bit of a secret of ours. There's also some great opportunities to generate some pretty good traffic on Reddit using paid Reddit campaigns. Because of the subreddits and the culture within that channel, you can, whether you're personal finance or something on the B2B or the B2C side, you can target a lot of good sort of subreddits and get some decent traffic here for super, super cheap. And this can be kind of a twofold. It could be one, to build audience, but it could also sort of help your search engine optimization because Google is increasingly looking at the traffic to your pages to understand how valuable those pages are. So that's kind of the strategy that goes into a StumbleUpon or a Reddit. Again, depending on your product, Pinterest can be really valuable. Amazon, Kindle books and stuff like that, again, depending on your audience, can be really great audience builders. So again, you're leveraging their platform to drag across targeted or relevant audience into your own audiences. So a lot of times these strategies are pulling people across and either converting and becoming leads or converting into email or your Facebook audience. Always web analytics are important. I can't tell you the number of clients that we engage with that have never set up Google Analytics or don't have access to Webmaster Tools. If you don't have this, you should do this immediately because number one, it'll tell you what's happening on your website, whether or not you have enough traffic, and then if the traffic's going to the right places. It's always important to understand the conversion that's happening on these pages. You can see here, this is actually from ours. This tells you goal conversion rate. So how well is your website converting? Set up these goals on your website and then figure out how well that web traffic is converting into those goals. And that could be everything from downloads to actually contact form fill outs. And then Webmaster Tools information, they'll actually tell you where you rank for certain things. So you can figure out, hey, am I ranking for the right things and are they going to the right pages? So definitely your web analytics should be hooked up and working. All right, so let's transition from traffic to conversion. We talked about a bunch of ways to kind of up your traffic, to figure out opportunities and gaps to fill for traffic. Now let's figure out if we get them to the page, how can we help with conversion? So here's two things. I'm a little bit contrarian in this regard. There's a lot of people on the web that constantly are forcing the issue. B2B and B2C are the same. And in a lot of regards it is. You're still selling in all cases to an individual. But the actual process, the sales process itself, is going to require you to set up a little bit of a different web experience. So here's how I draw the line when I'm working on a website. If I'm working on business to business versus business to consumer, this is the way I think about the web design differently. So if I'm talking about business to business, yes, I'm selling to an individual, but I have to support a decision-making process that probably requires them to convince other people. It's a collective decision making. It's a committee that has to decide. It's a boss that has to decide. So somewhere in there, there's a more complex, a more collective sort of oriented decision making. So I'm trying to support that as much as possible. So I'm trying to give well-packaged information that these individuals that end up on my website that are trying to probably convince somebody else of my solution, I'm trying to give them lots of opportunities to take that away from my website and deliver it to that collective and actually help them make their case. Because again, in a B2B sort of scenario, we tell a lot of our clients that if you're selling something like enterprise software or software as a service, again, at the enterprise level, then the people that are coming to your website are probably already convinced of your solution. They're coming there because they want to advocate you. So a lot of times you're talking to the champion. And so you want to equip that champion with everything that they need in order to convince the rest of the folks that may have an alternative solution in mind or just need to be convinced to make the expenditure. B2C, a little bit different. Again, you're talking to an individual, but usually that individual can make the decision. And a lot of times in B2C, we find out that when they hit the website, they're actually trying to make a decision. So these are more likely in a B2C situation. These individuals are probably more likely to not have made a decision for you or not be in favor of you and need some more convincing. So again, a little bit different. And then of course on the nurturing side, when we're talking about CRM, this is really important. B2B tends to be a longer sales cycle. You definitely need to have the CRM hammered down. B2C, a lot of times shorter cycle, so you can probably get away with not having a CRM backend. When you're designing the website, I always say the first things first. So often we forget about what we're trying to achieve when that visitor hits. But in all cases, on all pages, you should be asking for what you want them to do first and foremost, and it should stand out. So here's what I always do when I start with the client. I ask them to make a list, and I want it to be in order of what you want every visitor to do when they hit your website. And usually that list is almost exactly like this, regardless of what industry you're in. And it sort of goes like this. You either want them to buy something, you want them to contact you, you want them to download something. Again, this is the research, kind of take something away and maybe make a decision on it or find some value incrementally. Get their email. This is a huge one. Email list building. I can't tell you the amount of websites that neglect the opportunity to gain email so that you can continue to have a dialogue with these people that come to your website and hugely increase your ROI. If you're talking about software, which we play a lot in the enterprise software and the software as a service space, a lot of times we're trying to get you to take a tour or schedule a demo. This also works for financial services and that sort of thing. Give them a little taste of the experience they'll have with you, whether you're an insurance person or a mortgage broker or something like that. A tour is a very viable sort of target opportunity to give them a little sense of what that would be like. Or ultimately share something. This is kind of the funny thing. We'll see this on a lot of sites as we do the review. A lot of times the social sharing is first and foremost. It's probably the thing that you would least like them to do. You want them to do all these other things, but a lot of times those social share buttons are bigger than anything on the page. And quite honestly, most people don't react to those buttons anyway. So a lot of times we actually suggest you completely take them off. So, all right, let's get to website reviews. I'm going to turn over the presentation to Mike Carroll, who's our creative director here at Kaleido, and he's going to lead us through the rest.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening in today. I hope we're being helpful at the very least. I'm going to show my screen here and just kind of walk you through. Again, this is a huge topic, but just a couple of different things from a practical standpoint. So one of the things I just wanted to bring across, of course, is why is the creative director answering questions about conversion? Usually I'm the guy that handles the pretty pictures, but at Kaleido we have a saying that's very simple. It isn't beautiful if it doesn't work beautifully. And what we mean by that is many of our clients end up coming to us because maybe a design agency gives them a beautiful picture of a website, but that website doesn't convert. So these two things don't have to compete necessarily, but they do have to function well together. And Dave Quilty, by the way, has dropped the link to this article into the chat if you want to give it a read. It's basically just kind of our approach to what that means and to how to design things from a design thinking / how to make sure that something beautiful actually works the way you need it to. But what I want to talk to you about today is about conversion and directly answering the question, by the way, of one of our listeners today or our viewers, so to speak, about the difference between a squeeze page or a landing page and then creating what we call here at Kaleido information funnels. This is another article, by the way, that we were featured in Kissmetrics, another great read that talks a little bit about how we found this out and how we learned it, so to speak, and how we put it to good use. But I'm actually going to go ahead and show you what this article is about rather than having you have to read it. So let's talk about the old model first. The old model, the best way to see it, by the way, is through PPC. The old model on the web says one of two things, is that you click on a PPC ad, and if I were to click on this one, it would take me to this page. I'll just show you, already loaded here. And this is the old model. Great. This is a landing page, the squeeze page that Mike was talking about, right? Which is you're driving traffic into a single page, and they have to convert in this form, and you hope that this information is enough to convince them to do so. What these folks have done is actually a little bit better. Technically, they've got some secondary calls to action here, an ebook to sign up for, and some other white papers or fact sheets down here to sign up for. So that's a good thing. But essentially, this is kind of that old model, which is let's drive a bunch of traffic to this page, and hopefully 2% of that traffic or so actually ends up converting by filling out this particular form. What we've discovered is that you cannot decide, the most important thing to remember is that you cannot decide when one of your users converts. And so this should answer Mike's question very directly, is that I am always for creating, like I said before, these sort of information funnels, and then providing the opportunity to convert everywhere on your site. The most important example is WestIP, which is featured in that Kissmetrics article, one of our clients who's been nice enough to let us use them as an example. And this is their old website. Before, you could go to any one of these pages, and they had the traditional model as well, as sort of single landing pages with a single form, just like this one, and that was the only place they were offering conversion. When we first engaged them and we said, you know what, we think that that's not the best way to do it, so let's do one thing very simply. Let's make sure that someone can convert anywhere, and that's where this form right here came into play. So if you were to travel on WestIP Communications, everywhere on the site, this form exists. And the second that we did that, we not only increased their goal conversion, which I'll show you here in a second, but we increased their lead conversion as well. The difference between goal and lead conversion, of course, is their lead conversion is actually a potential sale, and their goal conversions are just, they had conversions set up for downloading white papers, for downloading case studies, and so on and so forth. But their lead conversion, actually taking that traffic, it converts into kind of goal conversions, then to lead conversions, ended up tripling, all because of this form. And it's all based on the assumption, again, that you cannot decide when your user converts. So create an information funnel for them so they can drill down further and further and further until they finally decide that, you know what, it's time to talk to someone at the company, or it's time to make a buying decision. Just to look at analytics here so you can kind of see how this ended up working. This is actually from January of 2013 to April of 2015. And you can see right here, this is the most important part. And these are all their goal conversions. This is a long time, so this is a very large number. But these are all the different conversions that they have, right? Whether it's product collateral or different kinds of contact forms or case studies. But this is that sidebar form. And this, by the way, was when it was implemented. And you can see this very high trend. This coming down right here, just so you know, is that we've consolidated what goals we're tracking. So obviously we're tracking way less. But still, tracking half as many goals, we're getting twice as many conversions that they were before we started engaging them, which is right around this time right here. And again, the most important thing is creating those information funnels. So what does an information funnel look like, and what does ubiquitous sort of all the time, on all the time conversion look like? It's actually really simple to think about. This is the site we just launched, another one of our clients, another software as a service type of client. They do referral automation software for companies like DirecTV and whatnot. But this is how the information funnel works. Is you can drive traffic to these interior pages or the home page, and there's always secondary calls to action that allows your users to move into self-segmenting information. So they come here, they recognize what they're looking for. Maybe it's demand generation. Great, I want to learn more about that. I'm going to continue to learn about this. I'm reading, but always here on every single page, no matter what page you're on, the blog, your resources page, the customers page, is the request a demo form. And so this allows your users to, by the way, cruise your website, engage the content, engage the information, and then when they're ready to convert, it's waiting for them to go ahead and fill out the form. Now, we would recommend that you do this instead of this drop-down, which I do like. It's slick and it looks nice, and again, but doesn't work beautifully. And we'll have more information on that coming soon as we start to analyze the results of this particular website. But I always, we usually at Kaleido go on what we know, not what we can sort of guess. And what we do know is that this works. And so this is what we recommended, but sometimes the client doesn't always agree. And so this was the compromise that we reached, which is an omnipresent drop-down form fill out for a demo. So that's important as well. Another great example of, again, of the information funnel, and this is we're in the process of redesigning. So this is the old WestIP Communications. Let me go back to the homepage for you. And this is their current site, which I like very much, but they wanted to go to something more minimal. Again, their buying decision process is very complicated. They sell very large pieces of software, and so we, again, wanted to create the sort of information funnels. And so what does that look like? Someone comes here, they're reading, they want to learn more, they can go to find a solution, which would take you to this page right here. And these are all again, parts of the information funnel. I want to learn about unified communications or enterprise voice. Great. Enterprise voice, we start to read more about it. More secondary calls to action in the text, videos and content supporting that information. And again, if you have questions, great. We've got facts, we've got FAQs, we have all that kind of stuff, but always omnipresent, by the way, is the Talk to an Expert button at the top, which takes you to the landing page to convert. Now, this is an assumption that most people get nervous about, by the way, because you're saying, well, God, there's no calls to action anywhere on here. How am I possibly going to get them to convert? Well, what we've learned through the behavior of some of the users and watching them is that they know where to go to convert if they want to. And when you try to force them into that type of conversion, what ends up happening is that they're either A, are not ready and they bounce out of your website, or B, you're assuming something that they don't find to be, I don't want to call it fair, but they don't like being forced into a conversion. What they do like is being provided information. And again, like Bill said earlier, if you're selling, pixie sticks or sweaters or something like that, I mean, you can still use this type of model, and I think it would be effective. Obviously, that information funnel wouldn't need to be as deep. So again, I think the most important part to remember to answer that question very specifically, and then I think we're going to look at a couple of your websites, is that Kaleido believes firmly in the fact that you cannot decide when your users convert, and thus you need to give them as much information as possible so they can make the decision that they want to make, and just always provide them that opportunity to convert at any particular time. And of course, we can get into remarketing and ways to bring them back to the site and back into your content, but that is a conversation for another time. Bill, I can't see the question, so if we're going to answer questions or go over individual websites, I'm going to need you to read them off, actually.
Okay, I'm going to just grab it back here, and we'll kind of go through these. I'm going to put you back on mute, Mike. Okay, shouldn't have feedback now. Everybody seeing my screen all right? Make sure that transition worked okay. Okay, so we're going to go first with Meg. So thanks, Meg, for volunteering your website to take a look. So let me pull it up here full screen. So a couple things pop out to me right off the bat. So remember one of those things that I said is first things first. That's what we always want to do. And you've kind of done that. You've done a little bit of, hey, this is what I'm about. If you're curious about college, you're in the right place and that sort of thing. One thing I would suggest is, so you kind of open up this way, and there's a lot of things going on here on this page, but you also say, let's get started. So my suggestion would probably be to land them on the get started. So you've got a process in place that helps them through. I would probably make this your homepage. You can use some elements from both of these and make it into them, but no reason to tell them, hey, you're on the homepage, but in order to actually do something, you need to go over to this other page, because again, they may not necessarily notice that in the navigation. One of the things we've learned about navigation is the navigation should be sort of as limited as possible. So probably the only thing in most of our navigations with websites that we work on that you'll see is some simple things like products or services. Again, very clear. People know what products are. They know what services are. And then about and contact, because the about page is usually the second place they go to see whether or not they want to do business with you. So I would eliminate some of these secondary things. Even blog articles and stuff like that, or blog can kind of be moved off. And then when I come to my homepage, I would probably get rid of this sidebar. So again, the homepage should immediately get to the business of what you want them to do. And just to kind of give you a framework, this is what we did. So this is our homepage, and you can see, hey, we tell people, what we do, and that sort of thing. And then we immediately tell them, hey, call us or email us, which is probably what you want them to do. You probably can't help too many people. There may be some information you can help them with, but you probably can't help too many people unless they actually call you. So Meg, my suggestion would be to go ahead and put your contact information right at the beginning. So sort of alleviate the long scroll here and get all of that information to the top. You sort of take a lot of real estate with the logo. Again, we're learning that, make the logo very minimal, make the navigation very minimal, and then get right down to the business of how you can help them and make that a real clear sort of statement and call to action. And sometimes that can be, again, just one of two things: call me or email me is a good way to start. The other thing I would do as you get into things like these are all distractions. A lot of people, just because there's easy widgets to put into WordPress, they like to put the Twitter and the Facebook We found that, again, those are huge distractions. If someone comes over here and sees like a tweet from somebody else that's interesting, or maybe a piece of information on U.S. Department of Education that maybe is stronger than yours, you're going to lose them. And then ultimately that's bad for two reasons. One, you lose them from your website, and two, the U.S. Department of Education is probably not going to be able to help them as well as you are. So I would take these things, sort of out of there. You can put them in other places or whatever, but not on your homepage for sure. And again, maybe a contact form right up here front and center, again, so that you can help them and you can get them to help. And again, just to make them understand that, hey, I'm open for business and to help you. The other thing is this calendar, that, again, really helpful resource. And I know I've got one getting ready to go to college, so I know all these dates are important. I would maybe move this to the center again, taking out this sidebar, using the full width here, and maybe putting this calendar on my landing page or my home page, and giving it a little more real estate to breathe so people can really use that. So that's a couple of quick suggestions there. Here's another one from Margie. So actually, know Margie and know this one. This is one of the largest corn mazes up here in Michigan, but there's a couple things that could really be improved here. One, first and foremost, if you come to this page, you're probably trying to figure out when they're open and when all this great stuff is happening, and nowhere on this page does it actually tell you when the corn maze is open and what their hours of operation are. So I would definitely get that front and center. The other thing, again, knowing how this one kind of comes together, I don't know if you've seen these, but I would definitely get one of these aerial drones to kind of fly over my corn maze and show all the activities and all the kids running around. I would definitely make sure that that's something that you did, so that when you come here, you can have that kind of in the background playing video, which a lot of websites are doing. So you can really immediately, this particular thing is a B2C sort of lead generation, so that you need to immediately get them to experience what they're going to experience when they get here. The other thing that I see on a lot of websites that you should avoid, especially since Google doesn't like this, is sort of this stuffing of keywords. So these are a lot of the activities, and that could be helpful, assuming that they actually went somewhere. And in this particular case, they don't go anywhere. They're just literally being stuffed on the page, and Google doesn't like that. So I would make this, again, show them the experience or something, or even link to those experiences, but don't just stuff them in. You'll see a lot of, probably even see it on this one, a lot of insurance, mortgage brokers, attorneys will do some of this stuffing where they'll go down to the bottom and just list. Actually, this is done in a good way. Locations, they've got some of the keywords and locations, but you'll see on some websites where they'll just stuff like every single area that they serve. So you got to be really careful about that. Okay, let's take a look here. Question. All right, let's take a look at a couple more. I think we've got some time here. All right, thanks, Mike, for stepping up. And, okay, that's one. Let's see if I can get to the next one. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of these. Okay, so strength here for sure. So we've got the call to toll free. This is another one of those things that I would just, again, I see this a lot where these social elements become first and foremost. They're really distractions. We're going to use these kind of audiences and these kind of social. We're going to use those outside. So we would actually go out to those platforms. Remember when I said you can leverage someone's audience or you could build your own audience? Really, all of that audience building, we're actually going to do separate from our website. So we're going to go out to Facebook. And we're going to build an audience on Facebook that we can target, and we can do that with paid, or we can do it organically. For organizations, getting harder and harder to do that organically, but paid, you could definitely build an audience on Facebook. And for this type of business, this is a huge opportunity for you. You can target right in on your demographic, and you can build an audience there, and you can bring that audience here with calls to action and ads. So, but there's no need for this. This really, you're not going to build this audience from this page. And even if you could, you wouldn't want to, because when they're on your page, it's business time, and this is where you make your revenue. So you want all of this social traffic to come into you, not to go out. And when you're building the actual audiences, you want to build them out in those platforms where you have new people looking at it, not people that you've already gotten. So I would take these off as distractions. This is huge. Like I showed you on Kaleido, our #1 conversion element. where almost probably 75% of our leads come from, is this phone number right here on this homepage. So if I were guessing on this, this 800 number is probably your top lead generation source. So this is definitely the way to go here. I like this. Again, first and foremost, hey, this is my demographic. I'm in the right place. This is what I do. Let's get down to business. So this is definitely strong. Videos and these sorts of things, how you built this is good. So there's a lot of strength here. This is kind of, actually you've done a lot of good stuff here, Mike. So we're probably just giving you kudos here. But the testimonials with real people and real situations. A lot of times people will do testimonials poorly, and so they just look fake. So this has some more strength. Whether or not you put the blogs down here, I don't know. A little bit of keyword stuffing possibly, but this is probably not horrible. Again, some people might have a specific way. I don't know this area. We do a lot of insurance, but I don't know if when people get here, they're actually going to look for a specific provider. If they do, this is good. If they don't, if this is not something that a user would normally be looking for on your page, then I would not necessarily go this route. There's other ways to get this search traffic. But again, if it's a user experience and users actually come to an insurance site like this and look for these specific things, then this is helpful. And Google will know that. But that's always something to think about. Will the user use that? If they don't use it, then it should probably be taken off the page. And then once you convert the lead, you walk them through all of that. Let's take a look at this other one. So this one, kind of the same sort of approach. I like the steps because a lot of times people are trying to figure out how this steps up. And it kind of depends on your how you want to go about this too. Whether or not you want them to convert here or you need to have a conversation with them. So my guess is for this sort of thing, this is set up more, I need to have a conversation with you before I can serve you. And this particular setup would indicate to me that maybe you don't need to have a conversation because you've kind of stepped it through here. But again, that's a real big consideration. I'm actually going to open it up, Mike, in case you in case you have any insight here, and I'm going to take a look at the questions while I turn it over to Mike here. All right, disregard. I'm going to go ahead and hold it. Yeah, and Mike, if there's anything specific
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I apologize, everyone. Yeah, the only thing I was going to say for this particular site right here is, there's a ton going on this homepage from a design perspective, and so as a user, I'm when I'm looking at this, we use a tool called Crazy Egg actually to kind of see. What Crazy Egg does is you can put it on your page and it allows you to see where people are clicking, where they're scrolling, how often they're clicking in certain places. And it's a really helpful tool. And actually, Bill, if you could actually get to a result, we could kind of run through one real quick. I know we're running out of time here a little bit. But that being said, so the one challenge I see with that particular page is just I don't know I can't tell as a digital marketer where you are wanting to direct your actual users. And so there could be a simplification here that would be a little bit easier, a steadier call to action. Obviously there might be more than one. I love the phone number. I love all the stuff that Bill talked about. But on this particular page, I'm just kind of at a loss as to where I should go. And particularly if you're selling something that, maybe someone is coming to learn about for the first time. You can do primary and secondary calls to action. Maybe your primary call to action is, learn what health savings accounts are all about, and it takes them through kind of a step-by-step process. We've had other success, by the way, in creating, quizzes for people to take. Is your family ready for a health savings account? Do you need a health savings account? There are plugins for WordPress and other ways that you can create a quiz, which then can generate a unique score, and you can collect emails that way by, saying, great, you are ready for a health savings account. Contact an expert to learn more, so to speak. But that would be my one piece of advice for this particular page is that it's just, the navigation looks good, the phone number is nice and clean. I love the open enrollment part, the urgency that creates. I'm just not exactly sure where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do from this particular homepage. Of course, everyone should remember, and it's one of the biggest mistakes even some of our clients make, is obviously your homepage, and I don't know because I haven't looked at the traffic for this particular website, is not always the page that people come in on. So it's important to, back to Bill's point about analytics, to understand where your traffic is coming in, and on what pieces of content or pages are your most popular, and then using that to your advantage rather than having to, oh great, I want them to get to my homepage more, let's try and get the homepage to rank, is use the pages that do rank to your advantage and then have distinct calls to action that drive people around your site into those information architectures. Because there's one thing that I do see here on the site that I really like. It is full of information, which I think is a great way to start. I love that call to action right there, which is Bill just kind of scrolled down it, which is, hey, get an instant quote or learn how to choose a plan. So there's, convert, or hey, there's an opportunity for more education. And I think making those types of things, those next step types of call to action, a little more prominent on the site, making each page a little simpler from a viewpoint that there's an endpoint or a call to action or a clear next step for each particular page is critical when it comes to designing for conversion on the web. And that goes back to that whole, it's not beautiful unless it works beautifully. So by the way, I believe this is Mike's site. What he could tell me right off the bat is, hey, I convert at 9 to 15%. Great. So for your particular audience, they love the sort of bounce around option to kind of look at whatever they want to do. Or we could learn, obviously, from taking the data that maybe there's some room for improvement. The one thing that I'll say to everybody on the call is that there's no one audience is the same, or no two audiences are the same. No two audiences behave absolutely identically. The most important part of digital marketing for any particular business is testing, analyzing, and then optimizing, based on the results of the data. Again, as a creative director, Bill had to beat a lot of the art out of me, which was okay. And we put a lot more data into the actual design work itself, and it works really well.
Okay, I'm going to take it back here for a second, Mike, and get some questions answered. Just a couple quick follow-ups too, Mike, as I was kind of clicking around. A couple things of note. One, you should spend some time on your website from time to time, because once the website goes up, a lot of times we don't actually spend a lot of time sort of looking at our website and thinking about it. On these interior pages, like Mike said, these are great calls to action, and you think it's a next step, but a lot of times you can easily move this right up to the top. So I would even put it above here, because a lot of times people are just looking for you to tell them what to do. The other thing that I noticed is you get into the blog, looks like to be a little bit of a style sheet issue. It could be my browser, I don't know. But as I go deeper in here, it looks like there's an HTTPS or SSL certificate or something that's kind of mismatched. So you definitely don't want to have, again, it could just be my browser, but you definitely don't want your clients to have these sorts of little glitches. So make sure that if you're using SSL, you get a properly certified certificate. I think that's maybe what's going on here. But at the very least, the point is, hey, take a look through your site, look for all those sort of gaps where somebody could kind of fall into something that's going to sort of scare them away or frustrate them. Okay, so we got the call to action. So, okay, this goes into some of the questions. I'm going to leave this up here because we actually have some questions. What would be the most productive call to action? A link, a button, or an image? So hands down, through all of our testing, buttons always convert the best. So when you get to a point where you want somebody to convert, you want them to click on something or go somewhere, buttons definitely help. If you're talking about a phone number, obviously highlighting the phone number at the top, it should be something that they can actually click on. So you can easily make this sort of click to call. A lot of people are on phones and mobile devices and places where they can actually make a phone call. So go ahead and make that sort of click to call. Images, a lot of times if we were to do Crazy Egg like we were talking about here, you can see people obviously do the navigation. In our particular case, they usually want to figure out our services or look at some of the work. But you'll see a lot of click activity happening in the headlines and those sorts of things. So if you were to look at a Crazy Egg on this, you'll probably get some click activity around this. So But ultimately, yeah, definitely put your calls to action in a button if you want them to go somewhere, or if you, again, you've got an 800 number or whatever, some sort of call out. It can be image. Links, a lot of times, and you'll see them used here as well. This is what I normally use links. Obviously, links should go somewhere. And should be something that potentially somebody would click on. But a lot of times we use links just for emphasis. So it's kind of well done on this site as well. If people are looking for Blue Cross Blue Shield, Assurant, or a particular type of provider, then this is good because you're highlighting this. They probably won't click on it, but you're highlighting, hey, we can provide for this category. So a lot of times I use links for emphasis. How important is responsive or mobile design? Critically important. So on some of our B2C sites, we're seeing almost 60% of the traffic coming from some form of mobile device. So if you don't have your website enabled for mobile responsive or different screen sizes, you're going to have trouble. Not only just seeing your site, but actually being able to convert on your site. So one of the little tricks that we do, just to keep using Mike as an example here, one of the easy ways to figure out whether or not you're mobile responsive, one, if you haven't developed for it, you probably aren't, but you can kind of see what your experience is looking like. So you just start to bring your screen size. This is about the size that you're going to see on a tablet, so you might be okay. But by the time you get down to a phone, you're going to be in some trouble with this site. So you can see your urgency is definitely gone. Your main call to action has gone off site. And so you're kind of left with this. So luckily, in this particular case, you do have a place for an instant quote still, so you've got a little bit of it, but you're going to get one or two reactions. One, hey, this is kind of broken, or I feel like I'm missing something that I need, especially when you see something like this. Oh, there's step one. What's the rest of it? I can't see it on my phone. So you might really reduce your opportunity here. So it's pretty easy to kind of take something into a mobile responsive. So let's take a look at one of these. So all of our sites are mobile responsive. You can see as we get down here, we change a few things, right? So the menu changes. I can always get to my menu in a really easy way. My get demo is always available to me, so I can go ahead and do that. So my calls to actions are really usable even on a phone. So mobile responsive, terribly important. You don't want to get into a situation where you can't convert. So let's take a look at some of these other sites. So they are mobile responsive. Again, this is still sort of the same sort of problem. I don't know when this is happening. So you need to fix issues like this. But again, I can at least see the whole site in a readable and kind of consumable way, even on a mobile device. So that's really important. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, Mike, so you use it, a M.dot site. Yeah, so the problem with sort of using a Mobi site or an M.dot site or sort of a custom mobile site is you're kind of assuming that they'll know which one to get to. And you're also relying on sort of the meta information to flip you to the right site. So generally, we don't even try to do that because we don't sort of trust the devices to recognize, or the browsers that people are using on their mobile phones to recognize that information. So we just make the core site mobile responsive. The other thing is you're not having to maintain two sites, so it's a little more efficient that way. You publish one place and everything's mobile responsive. So that's kind of the way everything was going, but now with a lot more sort of functionality in HTML and HTML5, I would suggest that your sites are just mobile responsive, built that way. And you can retrofit all of these things to do that. Most of it's style sheet sort of work. So it shouldn't be too expensive to do that. But that's what I would suggest. Then you don't. There's no chances of messing that up. You don't have to rely on the devices. So let's see. Do you suggest starting with a completed theme or hiring a company to build a site from scratch? So, I mean, this kind of depends. I mean, this is one of those things where it depends on your budget. And we always say you can pretty much accomplish best practices with any level of budget. So obviously, if you've got more budget and you can do more sophisticated things, you can deliver sort of a more tightened down experience. And you, specific to your business, your understanding, your customers, your data, your understanding, to be able to customize that experience and to make it unique and to become a differentiator, is always the best sort of approach. But you can, again, for smaller budgets, accomplish something with an off-the-shelf theme. In all cases, I would suggest a premium theme, so something you actually pay money for and is supported versus something that you get free, because generally you'll struggle. Once you break it when you're trying to do things, then obviously you're kind of on your own. So I generally, if you are going to go with sort of the more affordable route, definitely do a premium theme. Definitely choose one that's mobile responsive, and then generally those are anywhere from $75 to a couple $100. So if you're going to do it yourself, and sometimes you have to just based on the stage of your business, then definitely go the premium route and just spend the tiniest bit of money to have something that's supported. Should your website feature images and bios of real employees? Is that beneficial? What about the testimonials? Okay, so this is one of those situations where it's all about your audience. So if you're providing a service-based business like we are, I mean, we're showing pictures of ourselves. We want people to know that we're real. At the beginning of the webinar, I showed you that, hey, I'm a real person sitting in a real office doing this. So those things become important because people want to know that there are people behind the service. That somebody's going to answer your phone, that somebody's going to be around for a while. Financial services, I think this is really important. Sort of staying away from the stock images, which are so prevalent in personal finance. I'm talking insurance, mortgages, investments. There's so much stock photography on these websites. I tend towards, hey, let's have real people doing real things. Even if your office isn't the fanciest or flashiest, still being able to show that, hey, that we're real people. You can come to my office and you can engage with me, or you can even engage with me remotely, but at least there's people here. So I always tend towards that, showing that you have employees. You don't have to have a lot of, again, depending on what you're delivering, you don't necessarily have to have a lot of employees, but it's always nice to know the personalities of the employees. Some things, though, just doesn't matter. So if you're delivering, something more like, again, I don't know, health savings accounts, that's more of a delivery of a particular product, and it may not be as important. It's nice on this particular one. We have a video, so that reinforces that there's people there, but you may not necessarily need that. We have a client that's a free credit score. So if you're looking for a free credit score, as long as there's enough trust and credibility in the rest of the site, you don't necessarily need to showcase all of the employees. So that really depends. If you are going to put testimonials, definitely make sure that they are real, and that they have some sort of believability about them. So there's images or pictures or a real name, a real location. So if testimonials are important to your business, even videos are great, but make them real. So we are definitely out of time. I hate to go over. So a couple last minute things as we kind of close up here, because I'm not sure that we actually got to all of the different questions. So here's my last offer to you. If you have any questions that remain out there that we didn't get to, I think we've gotten through all the ones that were published, but if you have other questions, you can always reach out to me via email. You can put them on Twitter. Definitely sign up for the newsletter if you're not on there, because we're constantly publishing new information in all this regard. This will turn into a course at some point. So if you're really interested in lead generation, we're going to flesh this out. And then if you still wanted to have your website reviewed in some more depth, or you didn't get a chance to have yours reviewed, or you want to do it in a private session, go ahead and fill out that Calendly link. Again, you'll have direct access to my calendar and the open spots. Pick one of those and we'll spend 30 minutes and we'll go one-on-one with that. So hope everybody enjoyed the webinar. Make sure you're on the newsletter, because we're going to have a lot more. We have them about every 2 weeks. So we'd love to have you back. Again, thanks for being here, participating, asking good questions, and hopefully you all found it helpful, and we will see you here next time. Have a great one.